Calm down! Calm down! I just said hammer time! Hello, I am Bookface, and today we are talking about something a bit different. We're talking about mythology
and the gods.
Particularly Norse mythology. I just hit my hand. Particularly Norse mythology. Now, the Norse mythology was known for a lot of war. Most of the Norse gods had some sort of connection to war. Here we're going to be talking about the three main gods in Norse mythology, and definitely nothing about a certain movie franchise that may or may not contain these deities. On with the video. The first Norse deity we have is Odin. You may have heard of him. Odin is basically the main god in Norse mythology. He's the god associated with wisdom, healing, death, royalty, the gallows, knowledge, war, victory, sorcery, poetry, frenzy, and ruin. Dang it! And runes. Odin's former name in Germanic times was actually Woden, where we get the name for Wednesday. Odin would appear to people as an old man with a very long beard, missing an eyeball. He had a broad hat, he would wear robes, and sometimes he'd be holding a spear. He is also commonly followed by his two wolves, Geri and Freki, as well as the ravens, Hugin and Munin. He also rides an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir. Enough of the many magical things that Odin has. What about his connection to the other gods? Well, he was the son of two giants, which is sort of where the whole first god thing came from. Because before him there were just giants, and he was one of the first gods to emerge. Since, he's the main deity, of course he has a lot of children, but most notable are Thor and Balder. But Odin's origin are much more than just being the first god in the pantheon. Odin is also known to have been responsible for the creation of the world, when he murdered a giant. He murdered the primordial giant Ymir. Ymir was so massive that the blood that came out when he was murdered flooded and killed a lot of giants. Odin then dismembered Ymir and turned his body into the world. I can't remember all the specifics, but basically the sky is his skull, clouds are his brains, the ocean is either his blood or I think saliva. After slaying the giant Ymir, Odin became the chief of gods, and had many adventures from there. He's noted for having a magical spear called Gungnir. He's also known for stealing the mead of poetry, which is a thing. He also talks to a severed head of the god Mimir, not to be confused with Ymir. Mimir. He's a meme. Additionally, Odin's other great task is preparing for
Ragnarok.
You know that movie. I mean, what? In preparation for the apocalypse Ragnarok, Odin has several Valkyries, who he sends out onto battlefields to collect half of the fallen warriors. The fallen soldiers collected by the Valkyries are sent to Valhalla, where they fight and murder each other every day, but they're fine, they heal. The other warriors are sent to Folkvanger, which is run by the goddess Freya. At Ragnarok, Odin leads his army of undead warriors called Einherjar. Unfortunately, at Ragnarok, Odin
Dies.
Spoiler. He is eaten by the wolf Fenrir. However, one of Odin's sons, who isn't as important as Thor or Balder, comes and kills Fenrir after this and avenges his father's death. Next is the god Thor. Hammer time. Not hammer time. He is the god of thunder, lightning, storms, oak trees, strength, protection of mankind, hallowing, and fertility, for some reason. Thor's name is actually where we get Thorsday from. Now, much like how Odin has many animals, Thor has a lot of weapons with very difficult to pronounce names. Yay! He wields the hammer Mjolnir, which he can use to control storms and the winds. He also has a magical belt that can increase his strength, called Megingjord. He also has magical metal gloves called Yarngraper. and a magical bow staff thingy called Griddarvöllr. Now, Thor was married to the goddess Sif. Additionally, Thor was known for having wild, crazy eyes, red hair, and a red beard. That's right, Thor's a ginger. Oh yeah, in addition to his numerous weapons with incredibly hard to pronounce names, cue flashback. He also has a chariot pulled by goats. Their names are just as complicated. We have Tangrisnir and Tangiostner, I think. These goats are magical goats. They have the ability to be murdered. So these goats are useful because every day Thor slaughters these goats and eats them. But as long as he puts the bones back into the skin of the goat, it comes back to life completely fine. Those poor goats. Enter screaming goat. Thor also has an important role in Ragnarok. His role being that he kills the Midgard serpent, or Jormungandr, who he has as a mortal enemy since its birth. At Ragnarok, he murders this serpent. Of course, it also spits venom on him and kills him, so, However, after Thor is slowly and brutally killed by a very acidic venom, his sons Magni and Modi come to claim his hammer Mjolnir. Finally, we have... do I even need to say it? Loki! Now, if you had to know only one thing about Loki, here's what you need to know. He's horrible. Even though Loki would occasionally work with the gods and try to help them, he was usually just causing problems. And those times when he was helping the gods, it's usually a problem he caused. First is his relationships to the gods. He's the blood brother of Odin, so him and Thor are not siblings. He is also married to the goddess Sigyn. He is also the father of two adorable little boys, Narfi and Nari. And nothing bad happens to them. Of course, he has other kids, not by Sigyn, that one. By the giantess Angrboda. He also has the Midgard serpent Jormungandr, which you may know as the thing that murders Thor, Fenrir, which you may know as the thing that murders Odin, and
Hell.
With one L. It is family friendly. The goddess of death, who is half corpse and half living person, and leads an army of the dead against Asgard. He also had the eight-legged horse Sleipnir, but he's not the father of Sleipnir. No, he's the mother. In one incident with the gods, they had to distract a male horse because his owner was gonna build a wall. Insert very obvious joke here. And so Loki's way to distract the horse was to turn into a female horse and run away from the male horse. Didn't run fast enough. There are other interesting stories about Loki, such as the time he convinced Thor to put on a wedding dress and crash a wedding to get his hammer back from some giants, or the time that he had to make a goddess laugh, so he tied his things to a goat. So do you remember the god Balder? His mother was worried that someone was going to hurt him, because I think she heard a prophecy. So she made it so nothing on Earth could hurt him. Loki, of course, being Loki, found a loophole, and stabbed him through the heart with a mistletoe arrow, which instead of actually throwing himself, he directed Balder's blind brother to throw, so Balder's brother was technically responsible for his death, and got murdered for it. After this, the goddess Hel agreed to release Balder if everything on Earth cried for him. And it did, except for one giant, who turned out to be Loki in disguise. After this, the final insult was that Loki went to a party where everyone was mourning Balder, and just started having the time of his life insulting everyone. And this is where his punishment came in. He was chained to a rock, and a serpent was put above his face, dripping venom on it that burned his face every time it hit. His wife had a bowl to collect the venom, but whenever the bowl would get full and she had to dump it, a couple of drops would drop onto his face and burn him. As for his sons, Narfi and Nari, so you know how I said he was chained to a rock? They weren't chains. They were entrails of those two children. Okay, Loki was messed up, but that's not cool either. At Ragnarok, Loki will break free from his bindings and lead an army of frost giants towards Asgard. Loki, however, will die while fighting the god Heimdall. Of course, he'll also kill Heimdall at the same time. So there you have 3 Norse gods. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up, comment and subscribe on this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!